this isn't about the pirate character, but it kind of ties into the theme of the restaurant. Long John Silver's is one of the biggest seafood restaurants in the US. I said biggest, so how come they are in decline? Over the years, they have faced bankruptcy, a reduction in restaurant numbers, and a host of other things. But before we get to that, how did they become this big brand? Back in 1929, Jerry Lederer kicked off his journey with a little burger spot named White Tavern Shop in Shelbyville, Kentucky, a town of around 4,000 people. Now, that was a tough time. The Great Depression was happening, and World War II was just around the corner. Opening a new eatery might not have been the smartest move, but surprisingly, this basic setup worked well during the hard times. Fast forward a bit, and Jerry's burger venture turned into a chain with 13 spots. However, the war hit hard with food and labor shortages, leading him to close most of them. Post-war, things didn't look too rosy, but Jerry saw a chance. First off, he renamed his business Jericho after himself. Then, he decided to shake things up a bit and opened a brand new joint under Jericho's banner. This one was called Jerry's Five and Dime. Jerry's venture was somewhat pioneering, specializing in roast beef sandwiches a good 17 years before Arby's even came into existence. Despite this early jump, Jerry faced restaurant troubles, attributing them to the 15 cents he charged for the sandwich. Now, skeptical as one might be, Arby's started at 69 cents, and even adjusting for inflation, 15 cents doesn't seem too steep. Perhaps it was more about size or quality. Nevertheless, after about a year, sluggish sales led Jerry to abandon the roast beef and shift to a more conventional menu centered around hamburgers. From a third-person perspective, it appears he deemed hamburgers a less challenging, albeit somewhat mundane option. The likelihood of achieving a certain level of success seemed higher with the switch to hamburgers, a safer food choice. However, given its ubiquity, the chances of standing out and reaching great heights were considerably lower. Despite this, the transition proved successful enough. Over the next 15 years, Jerry opened 6 more establishments. In 1963, Jerry faced a tragic end, succumbing to a heart attack. Warren Rosenthal, a figure deeply ingrained in the company since its early days, took the reins. Starting as a restaurant manager, he steadily climbed the corporate ladder, eventually becoming CEO. With Jerry's passing, Warren assumed the roles of president and owner of Jericho, paralleling the turn of events from Jerry's earlier attempt with roast beef decades prior. In 1969, Warren Rosenthal seized a new opportunity in the fast food realm, envisioning a seafood-centric establishment. Yes, it's what you're thinking. Long John Silver's. Launched in Lexington, Kentucky, it marked a turning point. Until then, their ventures had fluctuated between failure and moderate success, but this was their breakthrough moment. Everything aligned for Jericho. The fast food industry was booming, and they had a unique concept that stood out. The public took notice, and crucially, Jericho possessed both the experience garnered from the restaurant and franchising business and the financial backing. Having recently gone public, they had the resources to meet the demand, setting the stage for Long John Silver's to become their first true success story. Within a few years, Long John Silver's multiplied, with hundreds of locations. By the end of their inaugural decade in 1979, the count had surpassed 1,000. The growth continued, solidifying their status as the largest fast food seafood chain in the United States throughout the 1980s. This expansion persisted smoothly until 1989, when, with nearly 1,500 locations and on the brink of national recognition, concerns about the company's future emerged. Increasing competition brought more fish options to the public, whether from similar fast food joints or companies selling frozen microwavable products in supermarkets. Simultaneously, the cost of acquiring the fish they sold rose, squeezing profits. Adding to the challenges, a broader economic downturn impacted their overall finances. The culmination of these factors caused a decline in their stock price, setting off a chain of events that ultimately led to the sale of the company. In 1989, their leveraged buyout unfolded as a cadre of executives collaborated with investment firms, ushering the company into private ownership after 2 decades. The $620 million leveraged buyout heavily relied on debt, restructuring the company's finances. The new proprietors, having injected fresh capital, promptly appointed new leaders who instigated impactful, yet not necessarily detrimental changes. Notably, a strategic shift towards prioritizing Long John Silver's restaurants emerged, diverging from previous owners' cautious approach of diversifying across multiple restaurant chains. The earlier owners, while maintaining a significant stake in Long John Silver's, had distributed their investments across various restaurant ventures. Over the years, they decided to focus solely on Long John Silver's, selling or closing other ventures. By 1991, Long John Silver's had constituted 100% of their business, leading them to change the company name from Jericho to Long John Silver's Restaurants. Despite becoming private, the exact numbers are unknown, but they seemed successful in the 1990s, hitting record sales and opening more franchises. However, the initial heavy debt from the buyout posed challenges. To cope, they sold about a quarter of the business, those other ventures, using the proceeds to stay afloat and reduce the debt burden. Shortly after, it became evident that their focus on Long John Silver's wasn't sustainable. Despite efforts, the financial struggle persisted, leading to a bankruptcy filing in 1998. They reported $457 million in liabilities, outweighing their assets at $329 million, resulting in negative equity. Despite claims of growing sales and profits, the burden of debt proved insurmountable. The following year, another company acquired them. Not much changed during that time, but it set the stage for a significant development in 2002 when A&W and Long John Silver's were purchased together in a $320 million deal by a company later known as Yum Brands. Over the years within that company, the number of Long John Silver's locations consistently dwindled annually. Starting at over 1,200 when initially acquired, the count diminished to less than 1,000 upon the eventual sale, representing the first instance of falling below this threshold since the 1970s. In 2011, a shift occurred as franchisee leaders and additional investors took charge. Adding to the challenges was the perceived health value of their food, a concern shared among many fast food establishments. Long John Silver's in particular relied heavily on sales from deep-fried chicken, fish, and hush puppies, a culinary offering essentially consisting of deep-fried cornmeal balls. This menu focus, coupled with broader industry considerations, contributed to the complex array of challenges faced by the brand. Their struggle to embrace healthier options began in the early 1990s, with the introduction of grilled and baked items initially well received. However, in 2013, the Center for Science and the Public Interest dealt a significant blow by labeling their Big Catch meal as the worst in America. This one meal packed over 1,300 calories, 3,700 milligrams of sodium, 19 grams of saturated fat, and a staggering 33 grams of trans fat, more than 16 times the American Heart Association's recommended daily limit. The negative publicity had a detrimental impact on the public's perception of the brand. In response, they entered damage control mode, announcing the elimination of trans fats from their menu a few months later. Also, when deciding what to buy or where to eat, the price is a big deal. In fast food, there's always a battle to lower prices. McDonald's might drop the cost of a burger, and then Burger King might lower the price of something too. These big fast food places can lower prices because they get lots of food and the ingredients don't cost them much. They can cut prices more than you might think and still make money. But when we talk about seafood, it's not as simple. Seafood has its challenges. It's not as flexible for lowering prices because getting seafood involves different factors, like where it comes from and how much it costs. So, cutting prices in the seafood business isn't as easy as it is for regular fast food. The folks in charge of Long John Silver's have a lot of money, and as we all know, money means power. In the United States, there are over 50 million Catholics who follow Lent, and during this time, they avoid eating red meat on Fridays. This ban on red meat results in a big increase in fish consumption, which is perfect for Long John Silver's since they specialize in seafood. The numbers tell the story. Just a few years ago in 2017, the restaurant chain sold a whopping 2 million pounds of seafood during Lent. The most significant days were Ash Wednesday and the first Friday of Lent, which spans 40 days. On Fridays, sales at the chain shoot up by an average of 84% during the Lent season. This time of the year is super important for Long John Silver's, and they kick off their major advertising campaign up to 6 months in advance every year. Despite struggling domestically, the decision makers at Long John Silver's in the mid-2000s thought it was a good idea to spend millions expanding overseas, particularly in Australia. They believed introducing a fried fish chain to a country known for its excellent fish and chips made perfect sense. To add an extra twist, they partnered with A&W in one of those combo location setups, aiming for a generic dining experience. However, unsurprisingly, except for the Yum Brands executives who owned Long John Silver's at the time, the venture didn't gain much traction. The Australian consumers stuck to their preferences, and Long John Silver's wasn't on their list. The experiment faded quickly. They came, they saw, and within 2 years, the location shut down. Today, if you visit that spot in Sydney, Australia, you'll find a liquor store in place of the former restaurant. It's safe to assume that the Yum Brands executives might have drowned their sorrows in more than a few bottles of liquor after that overseas expansion plan didn't pan out. In the end, Long John Silver's attempted a lot of things that didn't go down well in the long run. Let me know in the comments if you think Long John Silver's will make a huge comeback.